Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And before I begin my speech, I would like to add my voice of thanks to the Honourable Member for Totnes for bringing forward this debate. Childhood obesity is a problem across the UK, and the devolved legislatures, as well as the UK Government, must do all it can to tackle the problem both in the short and the long term, for the benefit of our children, tomorrow's citizens, to relieve the health problems obesity all too often creates, and for our long-term economic sustainability, as has already been outlined in the Chamber this afternoon. All corners of the UK can learn from each other, and I hope we will. The Scottish Government has been working hard on this concern by taking forward a number of initiatives to enable people to become more easily active, eat more healthily and generally find ways of feeling better through an improved lifestyle. But there is no silver bullet, as we all know. What we can all agree on is that there is a significant problem and there are clear socio-economic considerations to take into account which have a direct effect on the health of our children in general and obesity in particular. The SNP Scottish Government is implementing a number of measures to both combat and prevent childhood and indeed adult obesity, but there are far too many to mention in the limited time available. But it's worth remembering that fruit and vegetable consumption in the poorest 20% since the recession began has fallen by 20%, with children's diets being hard hit. For example, a number of national indicators on obesity and childhood obesity has been set out in Scotland in which performance is improving or being maintained. In particular, physical activity performance has improved, and the SNP Scottish Government is working well with schools and local authorities to ensure that children are more physically active. Indeed, my own local authority, North Ayrshire Council, has developed its own outdoor access strategy. Much has been made today about imposing a sugar tax. Indeed, the food we consume all too often contains significant quantities of sugar, of which many of us are seldom aware. And I know the sugar tax is something the UK and the Scottish Government is considering. And certainly this is an option and one which it is quite right to consider. But we must be careful too of a tax which may disproportionately hit the poorest hardest. We all know that eating healthy is not always the most affordable for families in a tight budget, and indeed a sugar tax must not be held up as some kind of panacea to a very complex problem. But if it is to be introduced, we must be certain that the impacts on our health are positive without the unintended consequences of increasing inequalities. We pay the price. We pay the price for our poor choices with our health, our life expectancy due to the development of serious health problems like heart disease, type 2 diabetes and cancer. And this puts more demands on our health services, and these demands will become greater unless we can tackle this problem. And I know the Health Committee has heard recently that the societal costs of this problem are £27 billion. But beyond the costs in pounds, shillings and pence, we also know that overweight children face other problems that plague them long into adulthood, such as bullying, social exclusion, a lack of self-confidence, unfulfilled potential and underachievement in school, which feeds into their job prospects for many, many years after. In Scotland, around 31% of children in 2014 were at risk of becoming overweight, and 17% were at risk of obesity. And these figures, although they have stabilised in recent years, are still worryingly high. Research in Scotland shows that factors associated with children being overweight or obese include snacking between meals on crisps or sweets, skipping breakfast, not eating in a dining room at home, and a lack of parental supervision, not enough physical activity, and greater social deprivation. Indeed, a higher proportion of children are at risk of obesity in Scotland's most deprived areas, 22% in 2014, compared to the least deprived, where the figure is 13%. Any action to tackle this problem must be sensitive to that. Any debate about how to make our children healthy must avoid finger-wagging at parents who are doing the very best they can, often in very difficult circumstances. And it's important to support people to make healthy choices where possible, as opposed to shaking our heads at them in righteous condemnation. And I would end by making what I believe to be an important point for all of us, Madam Deputy Speaker, and it's this: food labelling must be part of the solution. Whilst labels tells us what is in our food, well, these have improved over the years, they are still too complex in my view. One should not need to be a pseudoscientist to understand what is in the food one buys. Labels have to have more clarity for shoppers so that parents are fully informed about what's in the food they eat and the food they feed to their children. There is no doubt there are challenges ahead, but in this debate we must take parents with us. How and what people feed their children can be a sensitive matter. Parents want the best for their children, of course they do, and we must support and enable all parents to make the best choices for their children. Otherwise, regardless of what we say in this place, they just won't swallow it.